Bueno, pues para mantener nuestro compromiso de puntualidad, vamos a dar inicio a esta conferencia magistral después de unas intensas sesiones de negocios después de la comida que fueron realmente muy productivas, de los destinos con los aliados estratégicos, así como las conferencias que se dieron en los 3 salones, abarcando los 3 temas más importantes que nos interesan a todos los que estamos involucrados en la operación, en la administración y en la comercialización de un centro de convenciones o de un recinto. Entonces, bueno, una primera parte de la tarde realmente pero muy interesante. Y ahora, pues para cerrar esta tarde también con broche de oro, vamos a tener la conferencia magistral que nos va a impartir James Rooney, que el título de la conferencia es Meetings Means Business. Y si alguien duda eso, que alce la mano o que se salga para siempre. Pero sin duda que las reuniones generan negocios, sabemos que la derrama que se da, lo sabemos desde hace 3 años que tuvimos el impacto del turismo de reuniones, en cuanto a que prácticamente más de la mitad de la derrama económica no se da en empresas del ramo turístico, de ahí que es Meetings Industry. Y sin más preámbulo voy a leerles la semblanza de James. Él es licenciado en Economía por la Universidad de Harvard, nada más ni nada menos. Él cuenta con una amplia experiencia en la promoción del desarrollo económico y la innovación en Boston. Es realmente un personaje muy importante en esta ciudad, y antes de unirse a la Cámara de Comercio de Boston en julio del 2015, hace escasos 7 meses, Rooney fue director ejecutivo del Massachusetts Convention Center Authority, que es el MCCA. Esto fue durante 12 años y que estaba integrado por el Boston Convention and Exhibition Center, el John B. Hines Veterans Memorial Convention Center, el Boston Common Parking Garage, que es un estacionamiento con capacidad hasta para 1,350 vehículos, y el Mass Mutual Center en Springfield, que es un centro de convenciones unido a una arena con 6,000 asientos. El liderazgo de Rooney jugó un papel vital en la construcción del Boston Convention and Exhibition Center. Es un recinto de clase mundial que tiene 47,938 metros cuadrados, alberga más de 125 eventos cada año, y la ocupación y el desempeño financiero en el MCCA ha superado las proyecciones, con eventos que generan un impacto económico nada más ni nada menos del orden de $500 millones al año. Rooney es un exmiembro de la Junta Directiva de PCMA y de la AIPC. Actualmente es integrante del PCMA Foundation Board of Trustees y participa honrosamente para nosotros, y es un gusto, como miembro del PCMA North American Advisory Board para el tema de turismo hacia México, que llevamos ya 7, 8 ediciones y que nos da mucho gusto tenerlo con nosotros. Welcome, James. Thank you very much, and the stage is yours. Welcome.
Okay. Well, thank you for that very kind introduction, and thank you for the opportunity to visit your beautiful country of Mexico once again. I'm honored to have been asked to speak here at AMEREF, and it is good to see many of my old friends that I have made during my visits to Mexico. During my time in the meetings and business and through my affiliations with PCMA and Tourism Mexico, I was fortunate to have visited Mexico about a dozen times, to places like Mérida and Puebla and Guadalajara, Monterrey, Cabo San Lucas, Mazatlan, Cancun, and of course Mexico City. So you would think by now that I would have picked up some Spanish, but my Spanish is not very good. So you will have to listen to not just English, but Boston English, which is a little bit different. I was here in Mexico City just 2 weeks ago, before the visit of Pope Francis, with a group from Boston studying the Metrobus system here in Mexico City. We're living in an increasingly global economy now, and we have much to learn from each other, and this is a theme that I will return to later in my talk. And we have many reasons to continue to grow our economic and business relationships and to develop meaningful strategies, including leveraging the value of meetings. Why should we do this? Well, let's look at some data. Like Eduardo this morning, I like data. Okay, do I need to point this someplace? Oh, now I have to go back. Okay. We already have a strong visitor and tourism relationship. 25 million people visit Mexico each year from the United States. That's 68,500 people per day. 17 million people visit the United States from Mexico per year. And I was interested in, as Eduardo was speaking this morning about the difference between domestic and international visitors. This is a study we also did in Boston, and one of the things we know is that international visitors spend much more money, so they are a good group to attract. We also have a strong trading relationship. Mexico is the second largest consumer of United States goods, almost double that of China and second only to Canada. And the U.S. is by far the largest importer of goods from Mexico. For 26 of the 50 states in the United States, Mexico is the #1 trading partner. Since the passage of NAFTA, Canada, the U.S., and Mexico now make up the world's largest free trade zone. And U.S. companies have clearly recognized that it is in their interest to do business here in Mexico. There are 18,000 U.S. companies doing business in Mexico today. So what role can meetings play in continuing the growth of business and economic relationships between cities, regions, and countries? I believe in the concept, meetings mean business. I believe that our visitor and tourism industry and the more discrete component of that, conventions and meeting sector, can and should play a significant role in a city or a region's broader economic development and economic growth strategy. Recently, at a lunch forum for leaders of our business community in Boston, our Massachusetts governor spoke about an international branding and business strategy that he called Bringing the World to Massachusetts. So step one of our strategy is to get people to visit Boston and Massachusetts. With 25 million Americans visiting Mexico each year, despite continuing concerns of safety and security, you have a very strong foundation. Outbound trade missions are nice and they are valuable, but if you are selling your product, in this case your destination, whether it's Mexico City or Guadalajara, it is far more effective to bring people in to show them what you have than it is to visit them with pictures. Certainly, a big part of that strategy is the work being done in our airport authority in Boston in adding direct international flights. During the past decade, the number of international non-stop destinations from Logan Airport in Boston has nearly doubled from 27 to 53, including Air Mexico to Mexico City. But we also have initiatives underway in Boston to make the airport experience more welcoming and customer-friendly. I have been in the business of selling Boston and Massachusetts, both nationally and internationally, for about 15 years now, and I can tell you that the access and mobility attributes of a destination are among the top 5 decision factors for events that are bringing 5 or 10 or 20,000 professionals to a city, especially international delegates. And when you think about it, these logistical access and mobility issues are likely among the top 5 decision factors for business location and partnership decisions as well. Last month, we were pleased that General Electric one of the world's leading companies, announced that they will be relocating their worldwide headquarters to Boston, a major accomplishment for our city. During those conversations, however, I can tell you that airport access, as well as regional mobility and transport, was a major consideration for GE during those negotiations. I am aware that there is a $10 billion project to build a new airport here in Mexico City. I believe this type of investment is critical in attracting visitors of all kinds, tourists and business people, to your destination. As I mentioned earlier, I came to Mexico City to visit your Metro bus system just last week and met with leaders of your Ministry of Transportation. The work being done by this group to relieve congestion is not just an environmental imperative, it is a quality of life imperative and an economic and development imperative. So I would encourage all of you in the meetings industry to continue to advocate for access, mobility, and transport improvements in your destinations. Let's talk about the meetings and convention industry. Make no mistake, the meetings industry is big business, very big business. Attending, exhibiting, or creating a conference or convention is a key strategic component of businesses, corporations, professional associations, and governments all over the world, in the United States and here in Mexico. In the United States alone, according to a 2014 PricewaterhouseCoopers report, conventions and meetings produce $280 billion in direct spending, $770 billion in total economic contributions, and $115 billion in direct contributions to U.S. GDP. Eduardo mentioned this morning that tourism in Mexico is larger in terms of GDP contribution than construction and agriculture. In the United States, meetings and conventions alone, not tourism, are larger in terms of GDP than the performing arts industry, spectator sports industry, the motion picture industry, the sound recording industry, so the music industry, amusements and gambling industries. And it's about the same size as the United States auto industry. 225 million people attended 1.8 million conventions and meetings last year in the United States alone. In 2015, the Center for Exhibition Industry Research in Chicago, that reports on business meetings, not association meetings, reported that there were 13,500 business-to-business and business-to-consumer exhibitions held in the United States, Canada, and Mexico, accounting for more than 107 million attendees and 1.9 million exhibitors. And despite what you might read, since 2011, the meetings and convention industry has experienced over 21 straight quarters of growth. That's more than 5 years, and that's adding a lot of jobs to our economy. So why are meetings and why is all this activity important to your local economy? Meetings and conventions are about two things: business and commerce, information and knowledge exchange. Despite the fact that we do it all the time, nobody ever created a convention or a meeting just so people could go to sleep in a hotel bed. When cities host conventions, we certainly want all of the so-called tourism benefits: people sleeping in hotels, eating in restaurants, shopping, enjoying our cultural and historic attractions. And in Boston, we do very well at generating that kind of economic impact. In Boston in 2015, we held 260 events with 780,000 attendees, generated $800 million in economic impact, and created over 600,000 hotel room nights. And I know Carol Wallace from San Diego, my colleague, will talk about why it's important to measure and publicize economic impact tomorrow. This is something I wholeheartedly endorse. Back in Boston, I tell my people, If it is not written about, it did not happen. If it's not in the newspapers or in your reports, if you're not telling the stories or making your case to other business people and government leaders, it's just as if it did not happen. But I believe that we are only seeing and measuring the tip of the iceberg if we only consider the tourism benefits of meetings. Yes, I care about how many people slept in those hotel beds in Boston and how many people eat in our restaurant. This activity creates jobs. But I believe that we're only measuring this tip of the iceberg. I feel there is much more to meetings below the surface of the water that I think is undermeasured by the industry and frankly very difficult to measure and perhaps underappreciated by our host cities and our political leaders. The question we asked ourselves in Boston is, beyond the tourism benefits, can we play a meaningful role in branding Boston and Massachusetts internationally and in supporting the growth of our key knowledge-based industries and innovation economy businesses? Even though tourism and hospitality is our third largest employer, the Boston and Massachusetts economy is driven by knowledge-based industries like life sciences, biotech, medical care, healthcare, high-tech, advanced manufacturing, cybersecurity, big data, financial services, and of course, education. One of our largest exports is educated people. Our answer is that we can help our local economy grow by bringing major meetings, major international corporations, and global thought leaders to Boston and Massachusetts, or, as our governor said, by bringing the world to Massachusetts. First, we needed to create target markets. This slide is not well labeled because it represents major events or citywides, not some of our smaller regional events. But if you were to examine the industry sector distribution of conferences we have targeted and successfully held over the years, you would find that each year 35 to 40% are medical life sciences, and when you add all the knowledge-based industries I mentioned earlier, they account for 65% of our business. Our convention strategy supports and is aligned with our economic development strategy. Some of you know about BIO, one of the largest biotech industry conventions in the world. Most of you may not know about events like CYBOS, the world's leading conference on financial industry transactions that was in Boston last year, and ASIS, the largest cybersecurity event in the world that will be in Boston next year, all aligned with key Boston industries. Each of these events brings business and thought leaders from across the globe to Boston and Massachusetts. The meetings industry in Boston and the United States does this all the time. We bring people together. Our overall strategy has paid off, and according to the International Congress and Convention Association, or ICA, Boston now hosts more truly international events than any other city in the United States. This slide shows at BIO, this is a business meetings meetup forum that they had on the convention center floor for business people to connect from all over the globe in very short meetings. Now that strategy is being adopted throughout the world, and we are regularly visited or asked to speak on how we are doing this. I've spoken about this topic not only in cities throughout the United States, but also at an economic forum in Paris and a meetings industry event in Berlin. Cities are now positioning themselves not just as tourist destinations, but as knowledge-sharing, innovation hubs with deliberate programs to bring together visiting delegates with local thought leaders and businesses to differentiate their markets and facilitate business and intellectual connections. Let's consider the strategies not just in Boston, but in cities across the globe. If you read the strategy documents for conventions and meetings in Singapore, you will see language that conventions are about additional layers of benefits, especially to their technology sector. The woman who runs the Singapore Tourism Board says that when they host business events, delegates to conventions are more interested in going behind the scenes in their city and visiting the offices of our companies. In Australia, a group called Business Events Sydney, or BE Sydney, is measuring education value, business networking value, and driving new business as metrics of their convention activity, not just measuring tourism activity. The CEO of B Sydney writes, "For our clients, we don't see them in the tourism space. We are in the business and innovation space. I think that what many cities get wrong is that they are working just in the tourism space." So sure, they have good delegate expenditure on restaurant and retail that feed the supply chain, but that's only part of it. It is a very narrow view of what international events do for a city. Legacy outcomes are so much more powerful. In Hamburg, Germany, they offer tours to carefully chosen convention attendees of their business and innovation districts, their modern port, and their warehouse district when conventions are in town in key industries. They are promoting and branding what they call the German expertise. As our friends in Hamburg have realized, bringing people to your destination is only the first step. Deciding what to do with them when they get there is the next step. Business and thought leaders come to Boston and Massachusetts for a wide variety of reasons, not just conventions. The deliberate strategy of what to do with them when they get there is a topic I have been promoting in Boston. Maybe this sounds interesting, but too theoretical for some of you. How do we know it could be worth the time and money and effort? How do we know that knowledge and information exchange and business and commerce is happening or can actually happen during a major convention in Boston or in cities like Sydney, Hamburg, or here in Mexico City? In Boston, we asked ourselves the same questions. So in 2014, over a full year, we decided to conduct surveys of attendees and delegates to conventions we hosted in Boston to try to measure the benefits of having them in our city beyond sleeping in hotels and eating in restaurants. Keep in mind, this is a snapshot of what is happening without any deliberate attempt or strategy to connect visitors when they are in Boston. This is all organic behavior. It all happened naturally. We surveyed 42 large events held in Boston in 2014. We received about 3,000 responses, which is less than 1% of the people who came to events that year. About 80% of the people who responded came from outside of Massachusetts, about 15% were international, and about a third of the people who responded said they came only because the event was in Massachusetts. So we asked more questions. We asked people, why did you come? Nobody said they came to Boston for the weather or for the beach. 65% said mostly or all knowledge and information. They wanted to learn. 19% said it was for just business and commerce. 16% said for both. So about 35% said they came for business. 8%, so about 250 of the people who answered the survey, came with the intention of starting a new business partnership in Massachusetts. They came not just for the convention, they came to try to start a business partnership. 12% came with the intention of building upon existing business relationships in Massachusetts. They already had a partnership and they wanted to build upon it. 32% set up meetings, so about 1,000 people of the ones surveyed. They set up meetings prior to their arrival in Boston with businesses outside of the convention with no organized help. They did their research, they found out who they wanted to connect with, and they had their meetings. 8% acquired business leads with a Massachusetts company. 3% developed a lead that will require them to return to Massachusetts. So about 90 people out of the 3,000. This may sound low, 90 people, just 3%. But think about it. I said that the respondents were only 1% of the people who came to Massachusetts that year. If we apply that 3% who said that they are going to come back to Massachusetts for business reasons to the 841,000 who came to all of the conventions last year, that's 25,230 people who will return to Boston for business reasons just because they came to a convention. Are you skeptical? Okay, I'm skeptical too. So if we discount that and say it's off by 75%, the survey was 75% wrong, that means 6,300 people will return for business because they attended a meeting in Boston every year. This doesn't show up in our tourism metrics. It is part of the iceberg beneath the surface of the water that I talked about earlier. Think about that. If our survey was valid as a result of the conferences and meetings we hold in Boston each year, 25,000 people will return to follow up on business leads. What if just a handful of those people opened a factory or signed a supplier contract? Think of the businesses and the jobs. 139 out of the 3,000 said that they actually closed a business deal with a Massachusetts-based company while they were attending one of those conventions in Boston. And of those, 68% said that being in Boston for the convention was essential to closing that deal. Then we asked, because this all happened naturally, if we offered services that helped you make connections while you were in Massachusetts, would you use it? 46% said yes, they would, and 44% said they would actually pay for those connections. This was a survey of organic behavior of about 3,000 out of 841,000 people who came to Boston for conventions in 2014. If these survey numbers are valid or even half right or 25% right, bringing the world to Massachusetts is, in my view, a pretty sound strategy. To me, it seems pretty obvious that we shouldn't rely on natural or organic behavior. We need to develop deliberate programs like in Singapore, Sydney, and Hamburg, first to get people to come, and then to actually facilitate interactions with local businesses, government, and education leaders when we get them to our city. So what does this mean to Mexico? First, as I discussed, there are plenty of economic and business reasons for Mexico and the various cities and regions in this country to include business meetings in your local economic development strategy. I'm going to just get some water. Excuse me. But I realize, excuse me. But I realize that every destination is different. And for some, tourism is the largest industry, just like in Orlando or Las Vegas in the United States, and that's okay. The U.S. is already your largest business partner, and U.S. companies, as well as those in Europe and Asia, want access to your markets, to your labor supply, and to your distribution channels. Mexico has more free trade agreements than any country in the world. So from a foreign trade perspective, Mexico is an easy market to enter. You are well positioned as a door to the Latin American marketplace. Second, the meeting strategy of each region should reflect the industrial or economic strength of that region. Monterrey, for example, an industrial center with close proximity to the United States, is well positioned for such a strategy. Third, and I think this is important, the Mexican convention centers and meetings industry should focus more on growing their own events than attracting U.S.-based events, maybe through partnerships. This is the strategy of Europe and the Asian countries. If you are able to create credible events in your city in a key industry, given the already large economic relationship between our countries and the access to markets that you provide, I am sure you will attract thought leaders, business leaders, and decision makers from the United States and other countries. And if you attract business people from other Latin markets as well, U.S. business people will be even more interested. It is a great deal shorter trip to Mexico City than it is to South American countries. Although some will, I think it is less likely that American events that travel around the U.S. and Canada will include a Mexico City in its rotation, in part because there is such strong competition from U.S. cities like Boston, Washington, D.C., Chicago, and San Diego. You can see this strategy of creating events evolving right here in Mexico City, with the business being conducted by the German-based company Messe Frankfurt. In fact, Messe Frankfurt's Automechanica event will be here in April, an international event held in many cities that is trying to take advantage of the strong auto manufacturing industry that is here. Consider, can your city or your center partner with an international events company to create this type of event? Fourth, understand that people who visit, whether for tourism or a meeting, may be decision makers. Have a strategy. Make it easy for them to connect with your regional economic and business and development people and government leaders as well. When auto manufacturers around the world are here in Mexico City in a few months, what are you going to do with them? When Boston hosts a biotech industry event, for example, there will be people from 65 countries across the globe in Boston. We have an invitation-only reception for decision makers with our mayor and our governor for key decision makers in the bio industry. Finally, continue to work on common traveler issues: safety and security, access and mobility, as I mentioned earlier, your hospitality infrastructure, the quality of convention centers, the number of hotel rooms. And in closing, I hope I have provided some provocative thoughts about the value of meetings and the need to embrace meetings as a component of your regional business and economic development strategy. Thank you once again for this invitation, and I look forward to discussion and questions.